So the Green Party town hall on CNN aired on August 17th, featuring Jill Stein, of course, and her running mate Ajamu Baraka, and I wanted to give you guys my thoughts on that because I had a lot to say about it. Now, first of all, before I even get into the substance, I just want to say I really hope that there's more of these because since we got all of the controversies out of the way and cleared up the misconceptions that Jill is an anti-vaxxer, which is untrue, now I want a town hall dedicated exclusively to policy now that that's all aside. And I think that that would help Jill Stein maybe reach 15% to get onto the debate stage. But time is running out, so we have to act quickly. So I really do hope that CNN does do more of these. Overall, I think that Jill Stein shined. I can't describe her as anything other than brilliant. She blew me away. And every time I hear her speak, the sadness that I feel about Bernie Sanders not winning, it kind of goes away because Jill Stein is just like Bernie Sanders. You cannot get her to talk about anything other than policy, and that's what I love. That's what I look for in a candidate, and that's why I'm very excited about Jill Stein, particularly after watching this town hall. I was already excited. I was already a huge Jill Stein enthusiast, but I mean, this just cemented that. Now, the thing that I love is that when she talks, I'm not just inspired, but I'm actually educated. The facts that she keeps in her mind, I don't know how she has room for all that up there, but I mean, she talked about how the U.S. has between 700 and 900 military bases, and worldwide, all of the other countries have about 30 combined. No idea. I had no idea about that. Now, also the way that she challenges mainstream political views that are, they're basically seen as dominant, and you're not supposed to challenge them, like cutting military spending. Jill Stein does it, and she does it masterfully, so that way not only does she put forth a good argument, but she makes anyone seem unreasonable who didn't think to criticize this position anyway. Like, why is it that we're spending 57% of our discretionary budget on military spending? It doesn't make sense, and Jill Stein explains that in a way that I think really resonates with the American people. Now, my favorite part is her response to a Bernie supporter and how she actually thanked them.
Thank you so much for having changed the political landscape forever. So, big thank you to all of the Sanders supporters. And the political system will never be the same. And what I have to say is that you've learned really in real time why it is that you can't have a revolutionary campaign in a counter-revolutionary party. Bernie did everything right, and his supporters did everything right, but the playing field was really steeply and unfairly tilted against you, from superdelegates to Super Tuesdays to voting irregularities to the emails that showed how the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, was colluding behind closed doors with Hillary Clinton's campaign to smear Bernie Sanders in the press. And this was extremely unfair. And then Hillary now, has really moved to court Republicans, has sort of an official committee to bring Republicans over. She's appointed a centrist vice presidential candidate. They did not allow some of the Sanders spokespeople to have a role in the at the convention. Bernie himself was relegated to a very low-profile role. So what I'd say is all the work you did and the incredible passion and vision and blood, sweat, and tears that you put into that campaign, that lives on. And Bernie himself said, it's a movement, it's not a man. And it's clear Hillary does not represent what you were working for. Our campaign has been here from the start. Many people have looked to us from Bernie's campaign as Plan B, so that if they ran into trouble, they could continue building this revolutionary campaign, but now all the stronger for being inside of a revolutionary party that supports the work that you're doing and will continue to build it.
Now, getting to the issue of foreign policy, again, she nailed it, and I think this is one of her strongest points. So she talked about cutting military spending in half, as I mentioned, but I think that this is a really bold move in a political climate where Republicans are saying that we have this broken down military, they're using old equipment and we're just so weak, we're powerless, and we're going to get attacked, we're vulnerable. But for her to actually come up with facts and challenge that narrative, I love it. People need to hear this. Even if it's the case that Jill Stein only reaches out to a small crowd, we need to plant that seed that no, our military is not this weakened force. It's the strongest, most powerful military in the world, and we are in fact spending more money than the next several nations combined. She also correctly pointed out how Israel's illegal occupation of Palestine, it makes them a target. So by actually telling Israel that we don't support this illegal behavior and being consistent and saying we don't support, illegal activity from the Saudis or any one of our other allies, she's really making a great point. And there was that moment in there where the lady tried to do the gotcha and paint her as this anti-Israeli individual. And usually people who do this, they like to throw out the word anti-Semitic. If you criticize Israel, any and all criticisms are tantamount to you hating Jewish people. But Jill Stein is Jewish, so you can't use that card. And also, she's consistent. You can't get her for being inconsistent. The same standard that she applies to Israel, she also applies to Saudi Arabia and Iran and every other country. I love it. Now, there were parts of the town hall that rubbed me the wrong way, and this isn't because of Jill Stein, but there was the religious question. Okay, this is a waste of time. This comes up in debates. This comes up in town halls all the time, and it's a waste of time. Look, are you honestly telling me that if Jill Stein gave the wrong answer that you wouldn't vote for her just because of her religious predisposition? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get why this is a question that we're asking in 2016. It's time to move on. It's time to grow up and move past religion. Okay, this is something that you don't ask to someone who wants to lead the country. You ask this to a friend or a family member and you can have a discussion about that. But I don't give a shit about her religious beliefs or lack thereof. What I care about is the policy substance. So the fact that CNN would even filter out certain questions and allow this one to come through, it's so frustrating because they do it every single time. Now, also, the questions about vaccines was frustrating. I think it was important, but at the same time, anyone who was curious as to Jill Stein's stance on vaccines, it could have been cleared up with a 5-minute Google search. The minute I heard that Jill Stein was an anti-vaxxer, I looked it up, and it was immediately demolished. It's not true. She is not an anti-vaxxer. She's a medical doctor. Now, you can disagree with some of her other policies when it comes to science, like GMOs and whatnot, but she's not an anti-vaxxer. I wouldn't support an anti-vaxxer. Donald Trump is an anti-vaxxer. He's the true anti-vaxxer. Nobody presses Donald Trump on that stance, though. Jill Stein, however, they can't attack her on the policy substance, so they have to pivot to these non-substantive attacks that have been debunked over and over and over and over and over. Now, when it comes to what rubbed me the wrong way in this town hall, we get to this part.
Dr. Stein, given the way our political system works, effectively you could help Donald Trump like Ralph Nader helped George Bush in 2000. How could you sleep at night?
I will have trouble sleeping at night if Donald Trump is elected. I will also have trouble sleeping at night if Hillary Clinton is elected. And as despicable as Donald Trump's words are, I find Hillary Clinton's actions and track record is very troubling. So Donald Trump, bashes immigrants and is a xenophobic and racist loudmouth. But Hillary Clinton, has been promoting these wars that have killed 1 million black and brown people in Iraq, for example. The Democratic Party has become the party of deportation and detentions and night raids with, millions of people deported under Barack Obama. Some of them include the refugees from Honduras, where Hillary Clinton gave the thumbs up to a coup from which thousands of people have been fleeing who have not been welcomed into this country. And Hillary, in fact, has supported many of the White House policies of deportation and detentions. On, the issue of nuclear war, I am very concerned about trouble breaking out in Syria in this air war that Hillary is threatening to have. So, as disturbing as Donald Trump's talk is, I find Hillary Clinton's track record is actually very much of concern too. This politics of fear that tells you you've got to vote against the person you most dislike or the person you are most afraid of, that politics of fear has a track record. Because a lot of people have been, that's been like the prevailing mythology. You got to vote your fears, not your values. And what has that delivered? All the reasons you're told to vote for the lesser evil, because you didn't want the expanding wars, you didn't want the meltdown of the climate, or the Wall Street bailouts, or the deportation of immigrants. That's exactly what we've gotten by allowing ourselves to be silent. So in my view, we need to reject the lesser evil and fight for the greater good.
Okay, this question is beyond obnoxious at this point, because when people say you have no chance, you're effectively helping Trump get elected, they act as though they're being super pragmatic and they have this inside knowledge that we don't have. This is what you're arguing for. You're literally arguing that you don't want there to be any political opposition. Look at the polls. Right now, Hillary Clinton is dominating in every single poll against Donald Trump. So are you really afraid that Jill Stein is going to spoil the election for Hillary Clinton, or do you just want total and complete domination of the Democratic Party? You're asking there to not be any political opposition. Do you know how bad that is in a democracy? The Green Party, regardless if you think they can or can't win, which it's very difficult in our political climate, but they're a check on democratic tyranny. Without the Green Party, they could keep moving further and further to the right, and so long as they're just a little bit less shitty than Republicans, people are going to be, or feel that they're forced to vote for them. That's not acceptable at all. So the bigger the vote share that the Green Party takes from the Democrats, the more it gets them to pay attention, turn around, and move back to the left. So don't act as though Jill Stein and her presence in this election cycle is bad or detrimental to democracy. No, this is democracy. Political opposition is what democracy is about. And if you don't like that, go live in a single party dominant regime like Algeria. And also, I'm sorry, but you don't get to make Jill Stein a scapegoat if Hillary's shitty campaign ultimately fails. And you keep pretending that Ralph Nader single-handedly cost Al Gore the election in 2000. However, Al Gore won the vote in Florida. But by blocking a recount, the Supreme Court decided that presidency, not Ralph Nader. And furthermore, most people that voted for Ralph Nader were independents and registered Green Party members. Did some Democrats cross party lines and vote for Nader? Yes, but you don't blame Ralph Nader for that. You blame Al Gore for running a terrible campaign and picking Joe Lieberman as his running mate. And furthermore, rather than blame the few thousand Democrats that voted for Ralph Nader, there were hundreds of thousands of Democrats across the country that actually voted Republican. Are they not culpable as well? And then, of course, there's the argument, there's no way she could win. Again, it's not about winning. It's about the threat that she poses to the Democratic Party and how that has an influence on their behavior. You need political opposition parties to exist in order to keep the bigger parties in check, even if they don't have a chance of winning. And another problem I have is that this question is always and only posed to Jill Stein and her supporters. Who's asking Gary Johnson how he's going to sleep at night if he hands the election to Donald Trump? Because there is a significant amount of Bernie Sanders supporters that went over to Gary Johnson. Jill Stein gets about 11% of Bernie's supporters, according to one poll, but Gary Johnson gets 10%. So are we going to ask Gary Johnson why he wants to hand the presidency to Trump, or are we only going to focus on Jill Stein because her progressive ideas actually challenge Hillary Clinton? It's frustrating to me and I can't stand it. So obviously I was irritated with that question. So I really, really hope to see more of these. Kudos to CNN for actually doing it and giving press coverage to the Green Party. And in fact, Green Party enthusiasm spiked all over the internet. I mean, you look at social media, you look at Google searches for Jill Stein, and it just jumped. So this was great. It was a great opportunity for Jill Stein to get out her ideas about canceling student debt and her foreign policy ideas that are just common sense. So loved it, loved everything about it. Jill Stein is a fantastic candidate, and after watching this overall, my enthusiasm went up for Jill Stein even more, which I didn't think was possible. So look, she's great. She's a phenomenal candidate.